Hello and welcome to our June 26th, 2026 Freshet Friday podcast. This week, we'll talk about a frightening accident that left 10 students from a Port Coquitlam middle school recovering from apparent burns on a field trip near Chilliwack on Monday, an inspiring story about how a local surgeon is undertaking a sailing adventure to Alaska to raise money for Burnaby Hospital, and a special preview of an extended segment you'll hear in next week's podcast about how to be a tourist in your own hometown. I'm your host, Jeff Wheelwright, and with me on the podcast this week are the veteran journalists and founders of Freshet News, Janice Clue, Teresa McManus, Cornelia Naylor, and Mario Bartel, with their take on all of these happenings in Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. Welcome back, team.
Hi,
Hi,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to start with this story from Janice about how and why 10 students from this Port Coquitlam middle school were left recovering from apparent burns on a field trip. What do we know about what happened, Janice?
Not much. This is the BC's biggest water park. It's extremely popular. Head out to Cultus Lake for the day, and the kids go wild. Lots of slides and lots of fun. This is a end of the year, the school year um, excursion for kids at Medicata Middle School. And this happened on Monday at 11 o'clock. This is an end of the school year excursion for Medicata middle students in Port Coquitlam. They're in grades 6 to 8. And what we know is that these kids were lined up for the 0 to 60 raceway. If you've been to this water park before, you walk in and it's directly on your left. And you head up maybe about 100 steps and the raceway is there. For this particular day, they had a metal frame tent over the queuing area, and these kids were touching the handrail, and they got an electric shock. And some fell unconscious, and some were actually stuck to the railing. Two were lifted to hospital by air ambulance, and those who were transported by ground ambulance, they had the highway closed. The police had the highway closed, Columbia Valley Highway closed. Ambulances got to the hospital right away, and they were transported to Abbotsford Hospital. There are lots of agencies looking at this issue right now, such as the Technical Safety BC and WorkSafe BC. They're looking at the root cause, but BC Hydro was very quick to say that it wasn't their infrastructure, it wasn't their equipment. The water park is now closed until June 22nd. I did reach out to Michael Thomas, who is the chair of the school district, and he said the critical incident response team is handling this with the families and providing support for the kids at the school. You imagine this is kind of a terrible way to end your school year. And this generated an address of the House of Commons. The MP, Ron McKinnon, he delivered a speech to the kids saying how concerned he was. And he said, no parent expects a call like this when you receive something like news like this. And he wanted to assure the parents, the children, and those impacted that the whole Tri-Cities community stands with you. So this is a pretty traumatic way of ending the school year.
Yeah, that's awful. Well, my heart goes out to all of them, and I hope everybody makes a speedy recovery. Thank you for that. Now I want to turn to Cornelia to talk about why Burnaby Hospital surgeon Dr. Kim Costomo is celebrating his 50th birthday with a major sailing adventure to raise money for Burnaby Hospital. What's the good doctor doing, Cornelia?
Well, this was an interesting story. And, it caught my eye because my son recently, without having any sailing experience, sailed from Ucluelet to San Francisco, ran into some weather, and was more scared than he'd ever been in his life. And I'm glad I didn't know about it because it scared the crap out of me when I heard about what happened. So the idea of what Dr. Costomo is doing, he's got his daughter on board and his cousin, and they are undertaking the grueling endurance race called the Race to Alaska. It's a 1,200-kilometer endurance race from Port Townsend, Washington to Ketchikan, Alaska. And they completed the first leg to Victoria, which the race organizers call the proving ground, because you have 36 hours to do it. And if you don't, you go home. So they are in a 19-foot vessel, which Dr. Costomo said falls into the category of a dinghy. It's an open boat, and they'll be having to make their way all the way up to Ketchikan in this. What he said that he wanted to undertake a an epic adventure, something to mark his 50th birthday. He'd started thinking about it when it was his 49th birthday, and he started thinking about this race. And then he started thinking also about what he called the grim state of healthcare. And then, of course, at Burnaby Hospital, where he spent the entirety of his 18 years as an orthopedic surgeon so far, he spent it at Burnaby Hospital. And phase 2 of that redevelopment of that hospital has just been delayed indefinitely, and morale was low. And so he wanted to find some way to do something encouraging. So he's also raising money for surgical equipment. What he said was that moving into phase 1 is now almost complete, and moving into the new operating rooms, they need new surgical equipment. He said the most important thing is probably a second mobile x-ray machine that's much needed, and that costs about $250,000, he said. So far, his campaign that kicked off on Sunday down in Washington has raised $10,000, so they've got a long ways to go, and they're hoping more donations will come in as they give updates on their track. So the rules are you're not allowed to have a motor, even on board, even for emergencies. You can only get there by human-powered means. So they have to sail, and they have 2 rowing stations on this boat, which, interestingly enough, is called the Lindsay, named after Lindsay Mearns, who is the name of a person who donated $3 million to Burnaby Hospital recently for robotic surgical equipment. So there's all kinds of interesting Burnaby Hospital connections here. So they're making their way up there. I got an update earlier this week telling me about the first leg of the journey. Apparently, one of the first things Dr. Costimo did was drop his reading glasses into the sea and promptly misread the tidal charts, and they got swept 40 kilometers off course, had to row 100 kilometers to get to Victoria in time not to be eliminated, because if you fall too far behind, you just get eliminated. He gives the team about a 51% chance, I think it is, to actually getting to Ketchikan. Apparently the dropout rate or the elimination rate is actually quite high for this race. So there's still lots more to say about it and the boat and everything that they're doing. But look at the story on Freshet News and follow the trip, and maybe donate.
Well, also look at the video. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. That sounds like something his daughter must have put together. Apparently, she's quite an adventuresome person. Her name's Sophia, and she is not a sailor. She's got boating experience, but no sailing experience. So she's going to learn as she goes. Apparently, she's going to be their rowing muscle because she's quite fit. A 23-year-old. Yeah. With all the energy, I imagine.
Well, I mean, it impressed me he was doing push-ups in what looked like a creek bed. Well, that is quite an adventure. Well, now I want to turn to Mario to talk about another adventure, but it's the adventure of a development in Anmore, the huge Pinnacle Ridge development. So what's the scoop on that, Mario?
Well, this project's been kicking around for several months, and on Tuesday, Anmore Council gave its final approval to the development of the Pinnacle Ridge area, 75 acres of property. It's quite a complicated project that would bring 320 new homes to Anmore, which only has a population of about 2,500 people already. And those homes would be comprised of 51 single-family homes, 32 semi-detached houses, and 186 townhouses. And all the single-family homes will be able to construct secondary suites within them. So that brings it up to 320 new homes if everything is built. But it's interesting because Anmore put a lot of requirements that the developer and the 3 owners of the properties have to meet for this project actually to be realized. They have a 32-page master development agreement that outlines some of these things. They include the completion of several technical studies, such as geotechnical and hydrogeological analyses, an assessment of the impact of the project's septic systems, because Anmore isn't connected to the sewer system, so every home up there requires to be on septic. One of the builders has committed that no more than 4 homes will be connected to each septic system, and they're quite confident that there won't be any problems with that. They're also going to include training and education for all the homeowners on how to properly manage their septic system. And a big part of this project, too, is it's built on a fairly steep slope, and the volunteer fire department up there in the initial stages of this proposal expressed concern about being able to get their trucks up the street should there be a problem. The city of Port Moody weighed in and said, since Anmore gets its water through the Port Moody water system, We expressed concern that, if there was a serious incident up there, they may not have enough water to allow a wildfire to be fought, for instance. So the developers committed to construct a water reservoir that would not only supply water to the village, but also be available for any sort of wildfire or other kind of emergency. And these things all have to be done. There's several other it's 32-page documents. So there's lots of things in there, and all of them have to be done for the project to actually go ahead. So there's lots of outs for the village along the way here. Mayor John McEwen, who voted against the proposal, quite keen that those outs will give the village an opportunity to make sure this is all followed to the T. So yeah, it'll be interesting. There was also opposition to the project from the Mossam Creek Fish Hatchery because they're concerned that runoff from the slopes of the development will run into Mossam Creek and impact the salmon returns there, the salmon hatchery. So it's interesting because it's the second large development to come down the pipe in the last few years in Anmore. And the first one in the Anmore Southlands was ultimately rejected, and the developer has kind of gone to ground, and nobody knows what's going to happen to that land. And that was much larger than this one, and promised to bring services to the village and lots of multifamily homes. But again, and more residents seem to really want to keep their little rural enclave rural. And there's a lot of tension up there about whenever these kind of proposals come along.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Mario. I now want to talk to Teresa about a growing problem that New Westminster Council highlighted this week around elder abuse. What did the city do to help understand and address this issue, Teresa?
At the most recent regular council meeting, council did declare June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and this is a day that is marked in cities around the world. And speaking to that was a woman named Leonore Sally. She's from the New Westminster Community Response Network. And she said it's the 20th anniversary of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and society's come a long ways in terms of understanding it. But despite the greater awareness, too many older adults are still being abused. And she said, in fact, it was on the increase. So the group is asking a couple of things of City Council, and one is to work with the Community Response Network and explore opportunities for specialized training for frontline city staff, and that would include folks at the library, Parks and Rec, and then volunteers, and teaching them to the warning signs of abuse and how to report it. Council was quite receptive to this idea. Mayor Patrick Johnstone did say that he thought that there was an opportunity for staff to be the eyes and the ears of the community. City staff come in contact with folks every day. And so the council was quite supportive of this. And but one of the stats that was in there that was quite alarming was the network stated that the calls, based on calls to the Seniors Abuse and Information Line, that there had been a 71% increase in calls about elder abuse over the past 6 years. So that was like a dramatic increase. Now, this is based on calls to that line. But it is something to be aware of.
Well, that's really enlightening, Teresa. Now, I want to switch to you, Cornelia. I understand you have an uplifting story about Indigenous Peoples Day celebrations in Burnaby. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Burnaby is hosting its National Indigenous Peoples Day event on Saturday. Should note that that is a day earlier than the actual date itself, which is on the solstice on the 21st. But people can gather for the free event. It's at Civic Square at 6100 Willingdon Avenue, right by the Metro, just outside the Metrotown Library, between 1 and 5 p.m. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be music, dancing, traditional games, a bunch of food trucks, 3 different food trucks, all Indigenous owned and operated. The biggest vendors market that they've had yet. It's apparently twice as big as it was last year. And new this year is going to be a fashion show. the Indigenous designers on Indigenous models. And so this family-friendly free event will have activities for the kids, including soccer drills by an organization called Hope and Health. I got some extra details, or got the details from Michael Sasakamoose, the City of Burnaby's Director of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. And she said the event will be about all the senses. She was talking about the food and the color and all the things you can, and there'll be activities, different activities. I think there's some art making activities, that kind of thing. So yeah, I ran into her at City Hall because the city had hosted a screening of a new short film that's just been released called Together on These Lands. It's a short film that the city has produced in partnership with the 4 host nations. That's Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam, and by Indigenous filmmaker Kamala Todd. So I got a chance to look at that, and everybody should check that out. Anyway, while I was there, I got to talk to Michael about the event, and she emphasized what a priority it was for the city to work with those host nations, collaborating with them on events like this. So that people have a chance to learn about the original stewards of this land from the people themselves, from those nations themselves. And she said that's important because that makes the work authentic. And she gave props to Squamish matriarch Wendy Nahani, who's the curator of this whole thing, who's also the person responsible for bringing the fashion show. This is being done in partnership with the Vancouver Indigenous Fashion Week, which it's a week-long event in November that is well attended and has an international component, I believe, is what Michael was saying. So yeah, sounds great. People should check it out. If you don't have plans yet and you're listening to this on Friday, the day before, then definitely drop by Civic Square in Burnaby and check this out.
Well, that sounds great. Well, I also want to highlight another fun thing that's coming up. We're going to bring you a sneak preview now of a full segment we'll be doing next week about how to be a tourist in your own hometown. And we've got 3 special guests. They're leading lights in our local tourism industry. We have Chris Peters from Tourism Burnaby, Heidi Hughes from Coquitlam, and Ricardo Cora from New Westminster. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Well, we have a real treat for you today on the Freshet Friday podcast. We're calling this segment our Freshet Friday Fresh Look. And today we're taking a look at what it means to be a tourist in your own hometown. Helping me to take this enjoyable journey are 3 of the best possible guides you could have on this subject. Gerardo Coro, Executive Director of Tourism New Westminster, Chris Peters from Tourism Burnaby, and Heidi Hughes, the Manager of Tourism and the Visitor Economy for the City of Coquitlam. Welcome to Freshet Friday. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Good to see everyone.
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to see everybody.
Yeah, well, do you want to start by just all introducing yourselves a little bit and talk briefly about what you do and what drew you to working in tourism? Heidi, do you want to start?
I'm happy to start. I mean, my story goes back probably to when I was a young child. Tourism hospitality was always on my horizon, and I think it came from actually watching far too many episodes of the show Hotel with Connie Selica. I think that was the career that I wanted to have, but it wasn't even just so much, her. It was the hotel environment and just watching what was going on behind the scenes during some of the episodes, and not so much the drama that she was dealing with. But yeah, I've been in tourism hospitality since the late 80s, early 90s, and I started in hotels and moved on to meetings and conventions, and eventually doing work in municipalities. And that's where my heart is now, is just really doing what I can for my own community to make it a vibrant place where people want to live, work, and play.
Fantastic. How about you, Chris?
Okay. So I'm CEO here at Tourism Burnaby. And the reason I'm in tourism is because of my high school music teacher, of all things. So really great, gregarious guy. He was sort of a big brother to a lot of us as we're going through. And he traveled extensively through Europe and was an incredible storyteller and very influential on my friends and I, many of whom went on to become jazz musicians. Outside of the odd karaoke jam, I'm not as skilled at music, but I really loved the storytelling. And so that's what drew me to tourism, is that ability to, travel globally, meet people from all over the world. And a place like Burnaby, the world kind of comes to you. So you get to meet those people and help tell their stories. So I came came at this kind of through the side door. So similar to Heidi, I worked in a lot of hotels. So for Fairmont and Pan Pacific and Marriott over the years, and then joined up here at Tourism Burnaby about 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been a great ride.
Well, it's great to have you here, Chris. And how about you, Gerardo?
Yeah, well, so my first contact with the hospitality industry was when I was 7 years old, working at my aunt's restaurant. Not child exploitation. I was doing it on my. I decided to do it. They actually allowed me to do it. So I was waiting tables, and I realized that serving other people was awesome. And the reward by making others happy was always there. I didn't. Of course, I wasn't looking at that when I was 7 years old, but it was already getting to me. I decided to go for my bachelor's degree in hospitality and tourism management. And ever since then, I've been in many opportunities working for tourism at different capacities. At some point, I founded a consultancy firm to work with destinations. That was back in Mexico many years ago. And I've been the director for a few destinations in Mexico. We've worked with important strategic plans and marketing plans for destinations, and it's just what I love. It all started from my parents because they always took me traveling, regardless of what the economic situation was at the moment. Travel was always a priority for our family. So I got to see some of the world, and then I kept doing it on my own. And I developed a passion to look at all those stories from around the world, different peoples, and understanding how we're all connected, they're different, and being able to be part of the story was always interesting. And now being part of the storytellers part, it's also awesome. So we moved to Canada a few years ago, and I fell in love with British Columbia, and I'm just so happy to be able to tell this story from this end.
Well, the rest of the segment is just as much fun as what you just heard. I encourage everyone to come back next week for the whole segment. I now want to turn to Janice to talk about some of the extra goodies we've been adding to Freshet News in recent months, our growing list of columnists. Take it away, Janice.
Thanks, Jeff. I just want to point out that it's not just reporters writing for freshetnews.ca. We have a whole bunch of experts in food, in gardening, in science, politics, health, literature. We also have youth and seniors columnists. And this is our promise to the community to include lots of diverse voices in our reporting. And some of them write weekly, like Brian Minter. He writes about gardening. And Davidicus Wong, he talks about healthcare and wellness. And he grew up in Burnaby, and he works for Prime Care Medical Center in Burnaby. We also have the MLAs and the MPs who contribute once a week through a column called Political Pulse, which generates quite a few comments from the communities. We also have columnists that write every other week, like our chefs, Ashley Robello and Karen Curtis. Ashley is from Goa, India, and she has absolutely incredible images with her recipes. And Karen, of course, is at the farmers markets in Burnaby and Coquitlam with her cakes lemonade. We also have columnists that write monthly, like our SFU PhD science columnist, Jeffrey Zurich, and he hosts the podcast Whimsical Wavelengths in Burnaby. And we also have columnists from the three communities who contribute to the senior scene and the Teen Spark and the Wordsworth, and that's for the librarians. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody went to freshetnews.ca and checked out what they write.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have a rich body of contributors. Speaking of contributions, I'm now going to ask everybody for their contributions in our weekly Freshet 911 segment, where we talk about interactions with the emergency services. And Cornelia, as ever, I think you've got the first one for us.
Okay, well, I've got a couple here, and one of them didn't happen this month. It was actually last month. The Burnaby RCMP was going after excessive speeders. So they've put out a news release this week talking about catching 170 drivers. Excessive speeding is defined as speeding more than 40 kilometers over the speed limit. And so Burnaby RCMP was out and about catching those people. Anybody who gets caught for this, their vehicle is impounded for 7 days, and they're issued a $368 ticket. And I believe there are also points on your license. which are probably even worse. And just one standout, one standout for this campaign was a teen caught driving nearly 3 times the speed limit. He was clocked going down northbound on Royal Oak Avenue, so I guess that's down the hill by Deer Lake Parkway. That's a 50-kilometer-an-hour zone, and he was clocked going 146 kilometers an hour. RCMP said that he actually had problems stopping the vehicle, and the officer who got him on radar had to jump out of the way before he came to a complete stop. So, yeah. There's not a good start to this N driver. So he's a new driver. He has an N. He was 19 years old. Not a great start to his driving career. Oh, and I have another one while I'm at it. Police are also just put out a news release this week talking about a road rage incident also last month, an apparent road rage incident on April 19th. Burnaby RCMP got a report from a driver who had allegedly been verbally threatened by another driver on Boundary Road near Grandview Highway. And the suspect allegedly made gestures with a knife, brandished a knife. And at one point, apparently, he was close enough to attempt to open the passenger door. In the victim's vehicle, there was the driver and 2 other passengers, so that must have been a little bit scary. So now Burnaby RCMP is looking for help identifying the suspect in this case. They have some photos that the victim managed to snap. One of them, so there's 2 up on our website. You can see the man's face quite clearly. At one point, he looks like he's brandishing, it could be a box cutter or something, or maybe it's a knife in a sheath. It's a little bit hard to see, but now RCMP are looking for information that will help identify the man so they can talk to him about the incident.
Yeah, a little chat.
Yeah.
Wow. And Teresa, I know you got something as well.
Yeah, mine's not so much an interaction as opposed to an update from the New Westminster Police Board this week. I tuned in, and New Westminster, like Port Moody, has a municipal police department, not the RCMP. So they have a police board, and it was time to elect a chair and a vice chair. And so City Councillor Tasha Henderson has been the chair of the New Westminster Police Board, and she was reelected. And one of the comments that she had made at the meeting was, I don't know if I'm going to be here after October, because she is running for reelection. Typically in the past, the police board, it's the mayor who was served on that, but Mayor Johnstone had opted out of that, and council appointed Tasha Henderson to serve in that role, which she has been doing for a couple of years now. And so it will be determined who will be chairing the police board after October, depending on who wins and doesn't win in the election. The other thing that did happen at that meeting was Mary Trentadue, a former city councillor who is running for school board. She wasn't at that meeting, but she has taken a leave of absence because she is running for a seat on school board. So, yeah, it's the composition of the New Westminster Police Board come the fall will have a bit of a bearing on who wins and doesn't win seats in the election, I suppose.
So the elections have further consequences.
They do.
Well, thank you for that, Teresa. Any other Freshet 911 stories? Yes, Janice.
Last week, some vandals poured some unknown liquid over a statue in front of the Port Coquitlam Community Center. It's a statue of a young Terry Fox. It stands right in front of the larger installation. It's done by a Spanish artist and it went in last year. Police are absolutely horrified that someone would pour some kind of liquid over the young Terry Fox statue's head. Went over the head, went over the shoulders, coated. There's damage done to the statue now, and police are looking for whoever did this mischief to come forward.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm going to turn to sports now. Mario, you have a cool story about a Coquitlam engineer who's guiding a podium effort at Le Mans.
Yeah, I first told Ryan Dingle's story a few years ago when he first caught on with the Toyota Gazoo Racing, as it was known then, with their hybrid hypercar racing effort. in the World Endurance Championship. And the showcase event of that series, for anyone who isn't a motor racing fan, is the 24-hour Le Mans, which most people know that. It's a world famous race, ranks right up there with the Monaco Grand Prix for Formula One and the Indianapolis 500 as far as identity in the worldwide pantheon of car racing. And a few years ago, he was there. It was 100th anniversary of the race. This year, they were back and with a renewed effort. And I watched some of the race. If it's not an easy to his car, it's the second car in the Toyota racing team's effort at Le Mans. Finished third. They did have a lead for a brief time through the night when I was watching, and were battling for second. But it's quite an achievement. Ryan, as a local kid, went to Dr. Charles Best Secondary School. Got interested in engineering and was also a bit of a racing fan through playing racing games on video consoles. And he got his engineering degree at the University of British Columbia, and then he headed over to Oxford to get his master's in racing engineering, and he ended up going to work in Japan for both Toyota and Honda and various racing programs those car manufacturers run, and spent 9 years working in Japan in smaller series, single car series that are just local Japanese series, and then got the opportunity to go up to Toyota's big time WEC effort. So yeah, it's just one of those cool stories that, here's a local person operating on the world stage in a way you might not think of, but it also shows the possibilities. If you're interested in engineering and you like car racing, there's a way to get a job and live your dream. And now he and his family are based in Cologne, Germany, where Toyota runs their WEC racing program from, and making big waves there.
Wow, you've given me great hope for my 5-year-old grandson when he's playing Mario Kart. I could tell him, you're training for the future here.
Got to start somewhere.
You absolutely do. Well, thank you for that, Mario. And now we're going to turn to what's on this weekend. What's coming up, Janice?
Well, if you're not watching the World Cup games, I recommend that you go to Scott Fest BC, which has its 129th festival happening at Coquitlam Town Centre Park. Friday night is free, and then Saturday is a $30 ticket at the gate. Freshet News will be there. We'll be we've got our newspaper, and we'll be the founders will be present. Really exciting on Saturday. Not only have we got the competitions for the caber tossing and the Highland dancers and the pipers, but we've also got a tribute to the Royal Canadian Legion, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And we have a Maori welcome for the Kiwis who are up for the World Cup. Anyway, like I said, Freshet News will be there, and we hope to see you there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Okay, well, now we're going to turn to our favorite stories of the week. It's been a wealth of good stories this week, so who wants to go first?
I'll dive in there, Jeff. My favorite story was Cornelia's story about the orthopedic surgeon who is taking the 19-foot dinghy from Washington State to Alaska. I'm a water lover, and so I'm fascinated by any of these stories that people have of doing these sorts of journeys, and the fact that he is going to be making that trip with only sails and oars, no motor, is just wild to me. And I'm not going to lie, when I read her story and I saw that they were surrounded by a pod of orcas, I was very, very jealous. So yeah, that was my favorite story of the week.
That is very cool. Yeah, I thought it was a really good story too. And again, I would encourage anybody who reads the story to also look at the accompanying video, because it's fantastic. All right. Go ahead, Cornelia.
I'm just going to jump in. It's my story, but I mean, it was just a good story talking to Dr. Costello and the orcas. I forgot to mention that part. When they were lost and really demoralized on that first leg, their spirits were boosted, he said, by a pod of orcas circling the boat as they were feeding, which I mean, like Teresa, I'm so jealous. But one of the main reasons I really like that story, doing that story, is that Dr. Costello really seemed to be personally invested in the quality of the equipment and the care at Burnaby Hospital. Like when he was talking about about, getting the new equipment and not getting phase 2 and just like there's a real sense of ownership. And I asked him about that and he said, yeah, that's very true, that people at the hospital, like everybody's going to have to go to the hospital and you want it to be the best that it can be. It was his personal investment in the surgical program that was impressive to me, like that it was personal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is inspiring. How about you, Mario?
Well, I really got a kick out of doing Ryan Dingle's story. I'm a bit of a car racing fan myself. I don't watch WEC racing very often, but we get occasionally as journalists working in the local news level, we get opportunities to tell stories that are on a bigger stage, and those are always fun to do. And watching the final moments of the race, you kind of get caught up and seeing what's going to happen, and then you sit down at the computer and start pulling all the elements. Of course, doing an interview with Ryan while he's celebrating a third place finish in Le Mans, France, is not going to happen. So you're pulling little bits of information from here, there, and everywhere on the internet. There was a little documentary that the racing series, a promotional documentary series that the racing series had put together on YouTube, and I was forwarded a link to that and was able to pull some quotes for that about trying to explain what a race engineer does and what some of the drivers had to say about working with Ryan. And so yeah, those are fun stories to do, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we had that story up on our website within a couple of hours after the finish of Le Mans. And a lot of people probably don't think of the 24-hour Le Mans, but like I say, it's a huge event. It's quite spectacular, and in the car racing world to have a podium at Le Mans is quite a feather in the cap.
Yeah, that is very cool. Okay, Janice, how about yours?
Last month, we launched a writing competition for high school students to tell us about their favorite teacher. And we received 23 entries from students in Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. And we have posted these stories called My Favorite Teacher, and they drop daily at 3 p.m., and they'll be doing so until June 23rd. All the stories are very touching. They all have common themes of how a teacher took the time to lift them and how they saw their potential and they encouraged them to work hard, make them feel that.
True. Everybody has that teacher that would get them choked up if they started thinking about them, or if they started thinking about teachers that have made a difference in their own kids' lives too.
It's very touching because personally, I have a daughter who is graduating on Sunday, and I know a lot of teachers who helped her, and I just want to thank them. And all these stories all ring true. The teachers took time to lift the kids up and really cared for them. And that's what made a difference in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's actually my favorite story of the week as well. And a very particular reason for that, because I am actually going to my high school reunion next week. And it's my 50th high school reunion. But some of the teachers are going to be there. Anyway, that wraps up another Freshet Friday podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, keep asking yourself the question, is it Freshet Friday yet? And come on back when the answer is yes. Thanks to our team for being here. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.